Good morning. So I think we figured it out. So we've talked about mutations. I've used the word mutations. I've used another word called sensitivities, mutations in the environment, sensitivity. Somebody is mutated, somebody is sensitive. But where do these mutations come from? Where do these sensitivities come from? Disabilities. Hey, good morning, Caroline. Pip. Where do these genetic disabilities come from, whether in the womb or developed over time, or even when a child is born relatively articulate and then they lose their ability to communicate. Where does that come from? Now, there has been so much controversy and so much activism against the vaccine industry. And this is interesting because the vaccine industry, they deal with viruses. Okay? That's what they deal with. The CDC and ProMed, they deal with keeping track of new and emerging diseases all over the world. Viruses are their number one baby to figure out how to keep the human race from being decimated by a virus on a very sensitive population. So, when there's this much controversy, first of all, you have to understand why these vaccines exist to begin with, why the CDC exists to begin with, why the vaccine industry exists to begin with. And then you have to realize something that is very difficult, which is understanding the elements in our universe, in our world. And the periodic table would be a step in the right direction with understanding what comprises the air that you breathe, what comprises what's in your food supply, what comprises what your body actually needs. So when you break everything down, even the jelly juice, you will see a myriad of elements, such as heavy metals, such as minerals, such as bacteria that make up the jelly juice. And then you look at your body and you do a sample on your body and you will see the breakdown of what your body is comprised of. I mean, it's hormones, it's minerals, it's bacteria, it's, well, flesh, but what is flesh made up of? It's made up of everything in the universe that is then comprised and created in a way that allows life to flourish with the intention, a purpose. Okay, so the vaccine industry deals with viruses. The CDC keeps track of all of the deadly viruses in the world and the new and emerging ones. And then we see genetic disabilities in adults. We see mental illness. We see rage. We see fear. I mean, fear is a major component. We see major manipulation. Look at the marketing campaigns out there, creating the fear. Okay? We see people who are armed with information that abuse information. Psychological manipulation is huge. When someone is armed with that type of understanding of how humans operate, and they utilize those concepts to then strategically manipulate a population to induce fear to sell a product, that's a mental illness because you're coming from a nefarious, manipulative circumstance. Okay. So, and then you see look at all the different cancers, diseases, chronic illnesses, autoimmunity, genetic disorders. There's names for them all. There's Down syndrome, there's autism, lupus, fibromyalgia, Parkinson's disease. Um, I mean, I can go through the John Hopkins novel and go through every single disease, and all it would represent is just a different conglomeration of anomalies in your 11 different systems that have subsystems within each system. And each system, each subsystem has its own subsystem within each system. So you can imagine how many diseases actually could be created from all of these systems and subsystems within the human body. And then you factor in the animal world, the animal kingdom. Then you factor in the plant kingdom, the bacteria kingdom, the fungi kingdom, fungus kingdom. And now you have so much possibility to create or to have a deadly virus or a deadly concoction of something to then decimate a population. Well, why would a population get decimated? Why? And this is where all the fear comes from, because people have sustained an anomalous message to their body that weakened their system. Well, where did that come from? This is where now we finally figured it out, you guys. Okay, and I keep saying this every couple months. We finally figured it out. We finally figured it out. Oh, no, we finally figured it out. Yesterday, I was in a very chill mood. I didn't even really want to go on yesterday, but I did because it's Sunday Morning Live. It's my tradition. I'm not going to break tradition unless I really, really have to or need to for whatever reason. And it's very few and far between that I break tradition. But yesterday, I really didn't want to go on, but I did. But I knew, and I was talking about Down syndrome, because I knew something was going on with the Down syndrome and I couldn't figure out what it was. I'm thinking like, why would a certain people have Down syndrome and why others wouldn't? And then they're talking about, there's more of a chance of Down syndrome in older women who have babies. Well, in our society, when you get older, what does that mean? It means your body is breaking down. That's essentially what growing older in the mainstream and even in the alternative mainstream. When you get older, your body is breaking down, things start coming to surface. So we then since understood that there are three things that keep us alive as well as cause us death, and it's antibodies, yeast, and hormones. And then I started actually asking Google stuff. Now, Google is not going to tell you all of my theses. Google didn't tell me my thesis. I actually had to ask Google a question based upon what I was looking to substantiate and confirm. So you're not going to be like, well, Google, what causes Down syndrome? Okay, well, you can go look there and then they'll say that it's a deficiency in this. I mean, you'll see all these different reasons from different medical sources, different sources. But then I said relationship between viruses and Down syndrome. Relationship between viruses and autism. Now, somebody could say in the anti-vax world, oh yeah, you're just reading mainstream propaganda that viruses are the cause of Down syndrome, viruses are the cause of autism, to then deflect responsibility from the adjuvants in the vaccines. But let me tell you this. Our kids, we are exposed to mercury. Now, we're not getting mercury injected into us, but it's minerals, okay? If there's a food protein that gets injected into us and antibodies get created, and there's where the food allergies come from in a lot of ways, yes, I could say that's probably true. However, there are some people that say that they had never received a vaccine, which I don't know. I really can't substantiate it. And then they had a food allergy. I can't substantiate that. I wouldn't know, so I don't. I put it out there in case that is somebody's scenario. But how would I say this? So vaccines, when you're given a vaccine, you're getting, yes, you might be getting mercury, thimerosal. You might be getting some other types of adjuvants that excite the immune system to then activate your immune system to also then create antibodies with that specific virus, that you're trying to get a layer of protection for. Okay, well, it's no different in a lot of ways. It's no different, okay, than you're eating certain foods that you're ingesting, okay, that have mercury, that have different things in it. Because even if you were a total vegan, vegetarian, organic, living off grid, you can't escape the elements, okay? So the elements is mercury, it's fluoride, it's whatever you see that are the adjuvants in a vaccine. So you're still getting it in a different form. Maybe you're not getting it injected in you, but you're still getting it into your system. You're breathing in the air, pollution in our society. Nobody lives in a bubble, okay? So you can't prevent pathogens and excess chemicals that your body is supposed to filter out. Okay, so really, truly, so forget the adjuvants. Even if you got the green vaccine, we learned about the green vaccine a couple months back when I was going after Gail GQ because she wasn't even promoting titer tests. She was saying, oh, the green vaccine, and I was just coming down hard on some of these. Some of these say that they're anti-vaxxers, but they're really pro-vaxxers because they're really propagating the green vaccine. And they weren't talking about titer tests. Like, go get a titer test. And then my whole point was that, okay, fine, put your kids in a measles party and then get a titer test so that way you can then prove to the government you have a layer of protection. But here's the downside of that. You're getting a stronger version. Now, I know I sound like, I sound like a pro-vaxxer. Oh, you're going to get a stronger version in the environment versus a vaccine. And then someone's going to talk about how all the adjuvants in the vaccine. But I'll tell you this, when you have a very weak immune system and a weak body, contracting a disease in your population of people that you know nothing about, you don't have a list of titers, a titer test on every single person you come across, or that you're having sex with, or that you're hanging out with. So you have no idea what cocktail of stuff that they have that then you would then take in and then have a major disruption to your homeostasis. And then if you already sustained weaknesses in your vital organs, this is where death comes from. So when kids die from what they say is a vaccine, when kids die from contracting an illness in the population from a tick, you've seen that 2-year-old, you've seen that that article that a 2-year-old who got bit by a tick, contracted Lyme disease, and the child died. Okay? These viruses upload some major corrupt data that will send crazy ass messages. And then what happens is that you already have weaknesses in specific vital organs in your body, and that corrupt data could potentially shut the body down. And all the conditions have to be right, okay? So when you get a vaccine with what they say is a dead virus, attenuated, a weakened version, you don't escape the data because your system has to then have an immune response. That's the whole point of vaccines, is to create an immune response. This is where people get inflammation. This is where people get certain kind of issues. And so yes, they will get the antibodies. And so if they do get exposed to that specific disease in their environment, they have some sort of layer of protection. Now, if they get exposed to the same disease they got vaccinated for, somebody could say, well, I got sick with the measles. And it could be a different strain. It could be the fact that no matter what, you're going to get sick because even though you have that layer of protection, maybe it could have been worse or it's a different strain. Because remember, people are getting sick, they're mutating viruses. So we have probably way more strains than the vaccine industry has a patent for as far as giving people vaccines and mandating them. Okay, so there is no guarantee. I mean, on mutated bodies that are weak, that have a viral load, and this is why I say check your titer test, get everything. I mean, it's expensive. So those of you that have a lot of money to expend, get a titer test on everything. Get one on AIDS too, but maybe you don't want to because there's a whole stigma around HIV. But if you're brave and you want to see exactly all the antibodies that you have, you will then see, if you are positive for all those, you will then see your future if you don't get this nipped in the bud. And so with these genetic disabilities, like the Down syndrome, I was not even expecting to see that Down syndrome was triggered by a virus, but it would be. It would be, because mercury and the adjuvants in a vaccine, they're not the ones that we should be barking up. That's the wrong tree to bark up, because we get exposed to this stuff all the time. If mercury and fluoride, all these things were really that detrimental, that would cause autism and everything else, then everybody in the population exposed to these elements in some way, shape, or form, even in a concentrated form like a vaccine, would all have autism or Down syndrome or something else. So there's something else going on that people are not focusing on and I don't know why, because that little obscure thing, when I did a Google search, okay, now, yes, I'm a Google scientist, but there's information out there in different contexts for people who just want to know relationships. And then I started doing more research. Oh yeah, the mothers and the fathers of Down syndrome kids have a certain kind of herpes simplex virus. Okay, then I started seeing that the viruses attack the central nervous system of a Down syndrome person. Autism, same thing. Okay, MS, virus triggered. Then you start looking at all of the cancer, disease, and chronic illness. You realize that cancer is virus triggered. We were thinking, in a lot of ways, we're giving more credibility to the candida, which we should. The candida, when you let that go out of control, it then creates and fosters an environment for viruses to replicate, because viruses replicate when the environment allows them to. This is why somebody has cancer cells all the time. However, how do you keep them at bay? These cancer cells are the antibodies, okay? This is where the thing with the antibodies, keeping them balanced, keeping the yeast balanced, keeping the antibodies balanced, keeping the hormones balanced, based upon nutrition, probiotics, electrolytes. Okay, those things keep everything in balance. And then when you have too much lactic acid, like you heard about too much lactic acid, guess what's the balancing force of lactic acid? It is electrolytes. Electrolytes make sure that the lactic acid doesn't become overabundant. That's why this recipe is so amazing, because the lactic acid is not going to build up in your system when you have a balance of electrolytes. Okay, so now that we know that the elements like the mercury and the fluoride and the barium and the radiation, yes, on a weak mutated system, when you put somebody in a concentrated form, let's say a gas chamber of methane, okay, yes, it will overwhelm the cells. Your body creates antibodies against it to try to fight it off. And then what happens is, when you have too many antibodies of that specific poison, okay, then you create autoimmunity. But then what happens, it agglutinates. What is agglutination? When those antibodies fuse together, and then it's now the virus that will then attack your system. That's where autoimmunity comes from. That's where death comes from. When you're exposed by a gas, by a poison, let's say you drank Drano, your body is going to create antibodies, but it's so many antibodies all at once, and then eventually it can't fight it off because there's too much coming in than what you're releasing. Because if there's a way to release that Drano in a very fast way, that's when people throw up. That's when people have diarrhea. That's when people have all these things that happen that violently get something out of their body. Now, someone can say, oh yeah, juice, people are throwing up and diarrhea. Well, that's already what's in your body. It's activating your immune system in the proper way, a totally different context. And people have been harboring all of these pathogens, all of these parasites, all of these things that the body finally now is able to release. It's called autophagy, but that's a different thing, okay? So these viruses are the culprit behind our genetic diversity. And then you're seeing in the news that these Indian kids are dying from lychees because there's viruses in the lychee. There's the chronic wasting disease where you get prions disease, and then prions disease is associated with Parkinson's disease. And these diseases comes from viruses that are allowed to run rampant, and we're not uploading the right data to change the messages that is being sent to all of our 11 different systems. So that's why I say, if you guys do a titer test and you're not afraid to take a look at your viral load, you will see what potentially could trigger in the future. When somebody is HIV positive, they're looking at AIDS in the future if they don't get nip that in the bud. When someone finds that they're HIV positive, to them, it's like, they're like, holy crap, because the next thing is then AIDS. That's the best way I can explain with this whole thing with the titer test and testing positive. When someone tests positive for Lyme antibodies, they already see their body degrading. They already see the virus taking hold. Because why would they get a Lyme test? You wouldn't get a test if you didn't have something going on that you were suspecting that could be a virus. And that's the next thing. And so what are people doing now? Now they're just, which is great. They're doing modern medicine. They're trying to do detoxes. And sorry, but these viruses, when you weaken your body more with more mutations, more modern medicine, more antibiotics, more detox, more whatever, you're weakening your body to allow that virus to replicate. And it does. And these viruses are really the aliens. I was watching the War of the Worlds the other day, and I'm like, oh my God, these alien things, they're like these little pods with all these long legs, and they look like receptors. They actually look like receptors, like in an actual virus. And they're going and looking for the humans and then putting them up in the cage, and then they suck them into this thing and they eat them. And then when they die, their asshole pours out all of the processed humans. I mean, that's kind of a gross, but that's what these aliens in these movies look like. They look like basically viruses in a huge form. And then humanity's trying to fight these viruses. I mean, that's essentially what I think comes from all of these alien movies, is the fact that we have a billion different viruses that the CDC and all the different, the World Health Organization are trying to keep track of, so these viruses don't decimate the population. So when they have 50 vaccines on the market, there is going to, or new vaccines that are coming onto the market. There's these emerging diseases like Ebola, okay, that may not have left one specific area, but how well-traveled humans are. It just takes one trendy tourist, one trust fund kid, to go and do a backpacking in the back country of Africa to see some beautiful waterfalls, and then they bring home a virus that will then infect their population. It's going to happen. And this is why these scientists go out there and test and keep track of all the new and emerging diseases, because they know the population right now as a whole is so weak that yes, there could be a global pandemic because we have weak bodies. I mean, you're already seeing your friends and family pass away or contract some kind of illness in their 50s, in their 40s, in their 30s. I already see some of my high school friends are coming down or dealing and fighting cancer using chemotherapy. I'm 45 years old. It is now watching my friends from high school that are not really friends, just people that I know, that we just keep track of each other peripherally, but we're not like hanging out because we have different lives, different belief systems, different everything. But we keep each other in the background too, because we have this voyeuristic, type of thing. And so I'm watching people that are my age. I'm actually older than most of my peers. I'm like 1 year older. I repeated kindergarten. Okay. And so I'm older than all of them, but man, some of them, I mean, I've lost a neighbor from some disease a virus uploaded DNA, uploaded data, and messed with her system, and she couldn't fight it off. Okay, so then I found out what did I say? But I found that lactic acid probiotic is what keeps viruses at bay. I think there was like they, science likes to compartmentalize things, and they like to break stuff up and then compartmentalize these lactose strains to then apply it to a specific virus like influenza or something. And then they say, oh yeah, we have this new research findings. Research shows that this strain of lactobacillus that you find in yogurt and milk and whatever is then great against influenza. Okay, well, forget those strains in milk. Let's look at jelly juice as a whole. How many strains in the cabbage and kale, which is far more nutritive than a milk product, would then combat all the viruses that are out there? Okay, so we figured out if a lactobacillus strain in milk can fight against influenza and stop it from replicating, imagine all of the strains in J juice, the 13 million colony forming units of strains. And it could be even more if it's 9 months. So I could be getting trillions of lactobacillus strains, then with the electrolytes, then with the nutritive element of the cabbage and kale. How many viruses did I just purge out of my body? Now, I still have the antibodies for whatever exposure I had in my past. Okay? Because you don't ever get rid of the antibody of your initial exposure to some pathogen or some virus, but you won't have that viral overload to where you would test positive and then potentially have the actual disease at some point in your life. But the probiotics in the J juice has released the excess antibodies that were causing misfiring in my hormones, causing the disfigurement in my face and in my body, causing hormonal imbalances to where I was gaining weight and I was retaining water, really dry skin. I mean, you can name all the symptoms out there. Those viruses do upload DNA/data, and they do create and wreak havoc in a blueprint of a person's body. So it seems that a certain kind of herpes simplex in the parents of Down syndrome babies seems to be more prevalent. So in a lot of ways, this research that I'm doing, we're outing everybody's family medical history. We're outing everybody's medical records. Because yeah, I mean, under HIPAA, you're not supposed to divulge what's in someone's medical records. What's in someone's medical records? All the different viruses they would test positive for, because the hospitals would test for every single virus in a human to figure out what kind of treatment to give them. So now when we look at our children, we look at ourselves, we look at all the different cancers and diseases that we have, and then you look at on all your symptoms, and you look at whatever named diagnosis, you will look and see what virus is attached to it. And you will find that it's either the HPV, the herpes, or the human papilloma, the herpes, who knows what other virus. I mean, there's probably a lot of them out there. And then now that we know that most of us, if not all of us, have been exposed to herpes and to human papilloma, and then you're seeing your friends and family get different types of cancers, and then you're looking at what is the mortal enemy to these viruses and to candida and to just, pathogens, then we can start fighting and reversing these viruses. And then we can start uploading the right data, because the J juice has the right chemistry. It has the right data for your body. I mean, I'm just going to be frank and just let you know, it does. I see it in myself. I feel my gut stronger amidst all this crazy stuff that I'm dealing with. My gut is so much stronger than it was, I would say, even 6 months ago. No anxiety. It's like once and that thing yesterday when I talked about the Down syndrome, I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out what triggers Down syndrome. What the hell triggers Down syndrome? Because we know the mechanisms of how it manifests, but what was the actual trigger point? Oh my God, it's a virus, a specific type of virus that attacked the central nervous system. Okay, but why in one kid, not the other kids? Well, it depends on the strengths and weaknesses of the other children. And maybe it's a type of strain. You know, I mean, it's a type of virus that does attack the CNS, the central nervous system, but why one kid over another? Well, hey, why does one kid get adverse reactions to a vaccine and another kid doesn't? Well, either they're exposed already or one kid was weaker and that's why they got adverse reactions. That right there could tell you. Why do some people have allergic reactions to some foods? Well, their system is weaker. Why do some people have celiac disease when they eat wheat? Well, because they have a system that's weaker. They have mutations. Why do some people get high blood pressure when they eat a lot of salt? Because they have mutations. It's not the salt that caused it. They already have the mutation. Salt is an energizing force. I never had high blood pressure when drinking J juice, ever. Even before J juice, I would eat a high sodium diet because I was eating processed foods. No high blood pressure. If anything, I had low blood pressure. Okay? So why do some kids get cancer, disease, and chronic illness? Why do some people get cancer, disease, and chronic illness and others don't? It's because of your viral load. How many viruses are you sustaining that you don't even want to look at? I didn't even know about titer tests until, actually, I knew about it when I first started figuring out with my dog and all the extra vaccinations. So she came from the the Stark County Humane Society. They gave her round of vaccines of rabies and whatever else. And then I'm like, do I have to get more vaccines? And then I was trying to look at all these alternatives. So I called up a holistic vet and they're like, oh, just do a titer test. Like, what the hell is a titer test? But I didn't really look at what that was until way later. And then looking at the vaccine industry, the green vaccine versus the GMO vaccine, then I saw that, okay, titer test. And I called up requestatest.com. And that's when I told you guys, okay, if you don't want to get vaccinated, go get a titer test, see, put your kid in a measles party, whatever. But that's not even the answer. That's the wrong answer because your kid could be very, very mutated and getting them exposed to somebody else's pathogens could potentially devastate them. So that's wrong. Don't do that. And then I realized that titer tests then tell you all the antibodies. And we realized with antibody overload because of bad blood transfusions or wrong blood transfusions, oh, you're getting someone's antigen turned into antibodies. And then too many will shut the body down, or you contract some crazy disease and shuts the body down. So then we realized that, yeah, antibodies, viruses, all of that are the reasoning behind this, these genetic disabilities. That was a lot. So, yeah, so now we have to understand the whole pain. Then I looked at acupuncture. And acupuncture is just little needles. They put little needles in the areas of where you have an issue, or they put needles in the areas of the different hormonal chakras to then elicit an immune response, a hormonal response, bringing up the prostaglandin. So yeah, you feel the pain prick, and then you feel, and then the body goes into action. That's opposite of homeostasis. Acupuncture is the body under duress, and then the hormones will then come into play and be used as a temporary method to manage your symptoms. But what happens is that even though you may not have pain here anymore, it then comes out in other areas. So yeah, so with the J juice, we finally figured out it's the right data. J juice has the right data. It has the probiotics, lactobacillus, it has electrolytes, it has the nutritive elements like the cabbage and kale, it has the water, it has all the minerals and the electrolytes and the pink salt. Then you got to deal with pain and understand what that means. Yes, we are marrying in other types of protocols that are out there. Some people are marrying in their keto diet, trying to, and there is a diet with J juice, but some people will do the keto diet. They'll do other types of diets along with J juice. But really, truly, the most common denominator is the J juice. And understanding why it is that I have discriminated against the gluten-free stuff, the gluten, all of that, because most likely everybody has an overabundance of candida as well as an overabundance of antibodies. But candida was where I started from. And then we figured out that antibodies and hormones are also imbalanced, imbalanced. Okay, and so the J juice will keep the candida at bay, keep the antibodies at bay, open up your filtration system to work the way it's supposed to so it can release any excess so you're not harboring and agglutinating these antibodies to then potentially turn into something horrible in the future. Correct the message. Keep those viruses, antibodies, just way in the background. Don't let them overpopulate. Just think of War of the Worlds. That's now I'm thinking of all these antibodies and these viruses that are causing issues in everybody. Okay? When your body is uncontrolled, like when you're shaking, that's your central nervous system and muscles. Something attacked your muscular system, your central nervous system, your circulatory system. Okay? What's attacking it? It's a virus that basically created an anomaly. Candida, when you have candida, it lowers your immune system. It weakens your body because you have a fungus out of control. And then you have these viruses that are now replicating because you haven't kept your biochemistry well balanced. Okay, that's where replication comes from. Yes, eating a bunch of sugar feeds candida. Yes, doesn't feed the viruses. The viruses multiply. But what keeps those viruses at bay? It's the lactobacillus as well. So lactobacillus probiotics keeps the viruses under control and it keeps your candida under control. No wonder this is a freaking powerhouse. This is what I did not even know. I just knew that lactobacillus was candida's mortal enemy, but it's also viruses' mortal enemy. The probiotics, the lactobacillus. But remember, it's not just lactobacillus alone. So don't be going and taking grains and kombuchas and apple cider vinegars and alcohol and thinking that's going to keep your antibodies at bay. No, because when you're feeding the candida with all the sugars and then you're poisoning your system with fermented ethanol and then alcohol sugars, it's undermining any potential to keep your antibodies at bay. So then you're feeding the cancer, feeding the candida. That lowers your immune system and then allows those things to replicate. I mean, look at alcoholics. You think alcoholics that eat probiotics, right? Their tequilas are probiotic. You think they're really doing very well? No, they're not. People that drink kombucha like I did saw their teeth starting to disintegrate and an exacerbation of their symptoms. So no, that didn't work at all. Apple cider vinegar is fermented ethanol. That's a carcinogen. Okay. I got a hair. All right, so it's the right type of probiotics paired with the right element is the powerhouse. And that last component, that the lactobacillus keeps those viruses, keeps those antibodies, because also too the salt breaks up the antibodies too. But then the lactobacillus is another extra layer that I didn't even think about until I did more research and found that information in a different context. It's all in what you ask Google. It's not Google's not going to tell you what you're looking for. You have to already have the idea in your head and you get confirmation. There's a way in which you can be a Google scientist. It's not for everybody. Not everybody can think of these questions on their own because they want somebody else to feed it to them. You got to come up with a question on your own that no one else is asking, and then you go confirm it in other circumstances. It's pretty insane. So now that we know why the vaccine, it's interesting. I go on my business page, and I have all these anti-vaxxer friends that are doing J juice and everything, and they're just like, "Oh my God, I'm so concerned with the way you took a turn to promote the vaccine industry. Why are you doing this? Why are you selling out?" Or, not really saying it in those so many words, but in essence, that's kind of the tone. And it's not that I'm selling out. No, I understand. See, if you understand how the vaccine industry works, then it actually makes it made it easier explaining J juice, jelly juice, okay? Because jelly juice deals with elements. And jelly juice is not afraid of GMO. Jelly juice is not afraid of the chemtrails, the Wi-Fi. Yeah, jelly juice understands that you're going to be exposed to viruses in your environment that you have no control over. You can't prevent pathogens. And so there are some people that do not take care of themselves. No matter what you say to them, they will not change their diet. They'll bitch about how the chemtrails and 5G are destroying them, but they won't change their diet. Not to say that change your diet is going to be the end all be all, but they won't even make an attempt and a change that they know they can do. Like, hey, maybe laying off some of the processed food that's causing imbalances and causing more issues. Okay? So if they know, if the industry knows, if the government knows that you can't talk to people to change their freaking lifestyle, then they got to give you some layer of protection. What is that layer of protection? A weakened version of the virus that's in your environment. So that way, if you do ever come upon it that's out of your control, you're not going to get decimated by it because you have a few antibodies to help fight it off. That's the whole point. And so that's the point of J-Juice too. We know people not everybody is going to take care of themselves or want to change their diet. We know that, right? Some of you, are starting J-Juice and you're still staying with your diet, which is fine because it's a transition. Okay, some of you will not stay in the diet at all, but J-Juice is there to start and help you balance out the elements. You're getting some kind of nutritional benefit. Now, yeah, if you're eating 10 donuts in the morning every single day and trying to drink J-Juice, it's going to be longer and it's going to be difficult to fight your issues when you're undermining yourself by sustaining and perpetuating those imbalances, like your candida, if you're eating 10 donuts in the morning every single day and you're trying to do J-Juice. So, but maybe over time you do J-Juice, your biochemistry will change where you're not going to be then gravitating towards those 10 donuts in the morning. You'll cut down to 5, maybe 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, and then none, and then all of a sudden you're not eating as much as you used to. But with the government, they don't deal with transition process. Everything is immediate. Everything is like instant gratification. When people want a drug, they want pain reliever, the newest cure on the market is instant gratification. And that's what the FDA's test for, is make sure that's been tested on a certain amount of subjects to have elicit a specific outcome that then would be released. And then when people start getting more side effects than benefits, then that's when they say, okay, we're doing a recall. The same thing with the vaccines. They know they can't tell that guy down the street how to take care of themselves. They know they can't tell you that you should stop eating your 1,000,000 donuts a day. So if you are exposed to a virus that is in the environment that they've already know and realized and done research on, they're like, oh, hey, you are rolling the dice, walking around unprotected. Here's a layer of protection. And then you can still have your 10, 15 donuts a day, and then you will deal with the ramifications of your choices. See, that's how I'm able to explain J-Juice in a better way, by understanding why the CDC and biotech exists. Yes, but things cost money. You guys, when you go to the doctor, somebody has to go and do an intake. So they pay that receptionist maybe $10 an hour. Oh, and then you got to go get a lab. Well, how much does the lab stuff cost? How much does all that equipment cost? How much do all these doctors that are overseeing your issue, how much does their education, how much does the hospitals pay them? Somebody has to foot the bill somewhere to make sure that you're okay, to make sure that you can live another day despite your choices. Somebody has to pay for it. Okay? So yeah, vaccines are going to cost money. Pharmaceuticals are going to cost money because you're asking for all this stuff, but you're not willing to take care of yourself. You want the shortcuts. So you got to pay for the shortcuts. Nothing comes for free. So this whole thing of like, oh yeah, the vaccine industry is all about money. No, you're all about instant gratification, not wanting to take accountability for your stuff, and you want somebody to make sure that you're alive despite your choices. Well, the government's there to make sure that you're alive despite your choices. They can't tell you. They can kind of guide you, say, hey, here's the food pyramid. here's a food list, here's a diet list, especially for your diabetes, but you think all diabetics keep to the food list? No, they take their pills if they're going to go off the diet. Okay? If they actually changed their diet, they wouldn't have to be on the pills or the prescription drugs. So biotech is there for a reason. For those of you that want the shortcuts, that don't want to change your life, you just want a pill. Well, you want to live despite all of these new and emerging diseases. The vaccine industry exists, the pharmaceuticals exist, the ERs exist for people who take stupid chances like driving their motorbikes with no helmet. And you have to go to the ER, somebody has to be there to receive you. It costs money for your choices. Maybe if you don't utilize the system so much, you wouldn't have to pay in the system so much. So anyways, yeah. So viruses, so now will J-juice reverse Down syndrome? I'm going to leave that in your hands. Maybe one day somebody will come to surface and say, and will risk their reputation and say that their kid reversed Down syndrome through the J-juice. It's not going to happen tomorrow. This was just rolled out in 2017. We're in 2019. Actually, this was rolled out in 2016. 2016, yeah. Yeah, because 2017 was when, was when the group came into fruition, and 2018 is when the media went and attacked me. 2019 is where I'm trying to now, where everything is now finally figured out and calm for the most part. So 3 years. I don't see any Down syndrome person or any autistic person at this point willing to come to surface right now amidst the climate. And if they do, more power to them. If they don't, that's perfectly fine. But it means that all of you have a chance in the privacy of your own home to figure out what the benefits are and to create your support system if this is something that you wanted to do with the okay of your doctor as well as anyone else that's involved. But I wouldn't put it out there on Facebook that you're doing the J-juice for your Down syndrome kid or your autistic kid. I would wait way down the road when you see everything is reversed. I would not talk about anything publicly because there's still stigma with pain. People think that pain is a bad thing, and they would want rather you just stick with your mutations or be anesthetized with drugs than for you to actually face the pain and deal with your issue and reverse your issues. That's just the way our society works. The activists out there are huge, and they have no mercy. They figure out who you are. They will call the authorities on you. They think that you're hurting your child for whatever reason. All right. So, yeah. So anyways, that will be in the future. And yes, parents do hold a lot of responsibility for the mutations in themselves as well as their children. And even though if your kids are older, you can't make them see this, but you as a parent are an example to your kids. Even if your kids don't follow suit and want to do the J-juice or do anything to change their life from their issues, at least you can be that example for not only your children, but for your whole community. And some of you can't say anything at all because you don't want to risk your reputation. I understand that. So you just do the J-juice on your own. You don't bitch too much about the healing symptoms, or else people think that you're dying. And then they will have a total perception. And then they will call different agencies because, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different agencies for people that, because there's a lot of people that are imbalanced that will, like, we have these mothers that are pouring bleach down their kid's throat for autism. Bleach. J-juice is not bleach. J-juice is a probiotic. Bleach is a carcinogen. So yes, these government agencies are there for a reason because of people doing stupid shit with their kids and with their animals. Okay? So be discreet in how you go about doing J juice. J juice isn't poisonous, but yes, you're going to be in pain because you got to deal with it somehow. Not that J juice is causing you pain, but you finally have to heal from so many generations of mutations. You know, you've been utilizing drugs and alcohol to anesthetize yourself, sex to anesthetize yourself. Maybe it's time to chill the hell out on that stuff and actually face it with the right elements and get specific measurable results. So yeah, anyways, enough of that. But yes, viruses are the main reasons. So Candida allows an environment for viruses to replicate. So Candida still is the crux, but viruses are the real true reason of why we have genetic diversity in cancer, disease, and chronic illness. That's it. You get your Candida under control, you get your hormones under control, you'll get your antibodies under control, which then keeps the viruses under control. And then you have access to cellular regeneration when you finally get rid of the corrupted data out of your system. Bill Gates actually knows what the fuck he's talking about. He is not the enemy. Bill Gates is not the enemy. He understands what's going on. But like again, you can't legislate morals. You can't tell people how to eat. You can't make them eat better. You can't change people. So you give them a layer of protection to help program their body to be able to handle the world that we live in today, a very global world. All right. Have a good day, guys.